All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And Sykes told me he has all the things from the Doomajig into the Doomajig. So happy to see you here, Schlegel. Happy the world is moving in the right direction for you. And first off, sir, I mean, it's a big Wednesday. It's used to be National Signing Day. Like, holy smokes, it's kind of crazy that this is the case now, that this is where we're at, and it doesn't really mean anything anymore. I never thought I would see this happen, but pretty interesting concept, the fact that this is where we're at. What are we doing?
Yeah, Finley, man, National Signing Day. We got that at the high school today.
Oh, so wait, did Hunter sign with Finley then?
Yeah, he signs with Finley. So you know how it is. Like it's so funny, man. Like, Bob, why don't you tell people about your National Signing Day? Because we remember it. Tell me all the feels, because I think it has kind of been lost, and we are so solely focused on football. But there's a lot of other sports out there that are also signing on this day. But tell us about all the feels and what you did in the L-Town with the Golden Gales and your parents when you decided to sign to Ohio State.
Buckeyes. So I'll tell you about a little bit all the recruiting. So I ended up taking 4 official visits: North Carolina, Ohio State, Michigan State, Northwestern, in that order. And I finished up my official visit weekend. We had 2 before Christmas and then 2 after. So North Carolina was sweet because it was December 1st. I went down to Raleigh. It was 90 degrees. Unbelievable. Great experience. Good-looking campus. Good-looking co-eds. Football team was great. They had Julius Peppers. They just won 9 games. They're going to the Peach Bowl. My host was really cool. We drove around, went to some sweet parties, went to a basketball game. It was cool. Great experience. So, growing up, Schlegs, in our era, Carolina it was the deal. It's home of Michael Jordan. They had tons of NBA players, and their football team was good. And Mac Brown had just left and gone to Texas. So Coach John Bunning was there. He played with the Eagles. He's a Carolina grad. My dad had played against him for a long time. He was a linebacker. And so they had great war stories. John Tenuta was the DC. So that was a good visit. Ohio State, we had everybody up there for our visit. I had 13 or 14 guys. That was the only guy, or 1 or 2, that weren't committed. So everybody was putting pressure on me, and I'm giving Zwick crap because they're Zwick was one of the first guys who kind of helped recruit his class. He committed early, and he was the quarterback. And he's he's calling all these guys. So people ask me, "Does he called you?" And I'm like, "Hadn't called me." I mean, I guess that must not be that important. But in reality, you're calling the offensive guys. So I went to Michigan State. Good time up there. Hung around with TJ Duckett. It's funny. Drew Stanton was in there on my visit, and one of his good buddies hosted me. And I was the only recruit he said he ever lost in Michigan State history. He goes, I've hosted 25 guys, and I ended up hanging out with him when I was playing with the Lions because he stayed in Michigan over at Drew's house. And it's dude, you're the only guy that I didn't get. And he's it killed him. It killed him. And that was right after Saban left. They had just beat Florida, I think, in the Citrus Bowl or something. And with the Northwestern, it was cool. Jeff Backus, good buddy of mine, was my host, and I really enjoyed that. So it was a good time. So I take the last visit, and I'm waiting. People don't realize how big of a decision this is.
Yeah.
And having options is great, but it also the more options is overwhelming. And it's with people, most people all say they want to build their dream home. They don't want to really build their dream home. They want you to give them options of what a dream home could look like, and then they can pick and point. They don't want to sit there and be like, well, should I have the office in the front or the back? Do I put a pool in or not? Would I want my bedroom on the first floor or second? Where do I want the doors? How big do I want the bath? What colors? It's too much. It's overwhelming. Most people can't visually look at it and plan it. And for an 18-year-old kid, I just didn't want to make a mistake. That was it. My dad went to Miami, Ohio, and it's okay. He goes, if you're good, the NFL will find you anywhere. And that was always his thing to me. He goes, you want to make sure you go someplace where you know that you're going to be given opportunities. And so I'm just thinking, dude, my dad's from Lancaster, Ohio. Not that he didn't like Ohio State, but he goes, man, they had a lot of great players. I wanted to go where I was going to play. So I'm looking do I even go to Miami, Ohio? I told him if I'm going to go there, don't recruit me. If I'm going to come here, I'll call you and let you know. And they're all right, well, we'll have a spot. I go, so don't waste your time on it. I go, I have no idea. And so I'm putting it off. And finally, it was probably it would have been like last Saturday, not this Saturday, but last Saturday. It was my dad's like, where are you going to go? Like, what are you going to start telling these people? So I don't know. I'll tell them on signing day. He's like, this ain't going to be the way we're going to do it. You're not going to be the guy where the coaches find out on signing day. Like, you're not dragging this thing out. You've gone on all your visits. Like, you got to make a choice. Like, this is part of being a man and making a decision. And it was like, honestly, I got to get something in my hand. It was terrifying for me because I didn't know. Looking back on it, it seemed like the right choice. Like, why would I ever have not made that choice? But there's so many things you second guess at the time because you don't know how the future holds out. Like, walk in faith with that is tough. And so my dad sits me down, probably, I don't know, maybe like a Sunday or Monday night, and was like, hey, about a week and a half, 2 weeks before signing day. And he goes, hey, what is important to you? So we put down like location, ability to play early, coaches, majors, NFL track, like all teammates, recruiting class. Like there's probably like 12 or 13 things. Now, my dad wasn't probably, we weren't smart enough to like weight them and see which was the most important. But then I went through and he had them all and he goes, now rank these 1 to 4 with like one, I think 4 being the best, 1 being the worst, highest score. So I get done with, I'm going through, I'm like, okay, this is tough. And I put them all down. And as soon as I'm done, he just pulls that paper right out from under me. So I couldn't like kind of look and make decisions. Like, now where do you want to go? And I'm like, he like looked and he tallied it up. He goes, where do you want to go? I was like, Ohio State. And he's like, good. That's what the answer was. And he flipped it around and showed me. And Ohio State was like 5 points ahead of everyone else. And then like everyone else was in like within a point or two. So it worked out really well. It wasn't like 1, 2, and then a cluster. And I always asked my dad after that. And so then at that point, he made me get on the phone, call the other 3 coaches. And then I had to call, I think Mark D'Antonio, who was my recruiting coach last, and be like, hey, I'm coming here. But call the other coaches and they're like, hey, if anything changes, let us know. It's the hardest calls you have to make to grown man as an 18-year-old. You've talked to these guys for a couple of years, like you've become friends, like, and they want you there, and it's hard. And you let them know, like, if anything changes, just give us a heads up. And then I had my announcement, like, I think the Wednesday before signing day. And then so signing day was kind of a celebration. It was more of a coronation, not the hat dance and all that other stuff. I went out there. But on my commitment day, which would have been probably like last Tuesday or Wednesday, he had all the media there and everything. And I pull out, my Buckeye hat and put it on. And coincidentally, I think I might try to go find that at break. I think I still have that hat upstairs. It barely fits. It's been shrank. It's in the sun. It's been in the ocean. I had my buddy borrow it for a while. And thankfully I got it back from him when I was in college. But it was a stressful time, and I didn't want to make the wrong choice. And like we won a national championship my freshman year, and I still felt like I was making the wrong choice. And I always asked my dad, like the big thing is, what if I wouldn't have said Ohio State? What if I would have said another school, or maybe Ohio State wasn't the winner? And he goes, well, I felt like you wanted to go to Ohio State, but you were just worried about a bunch of things. And really just the fact of like, it's Big State U. And my dad had a player that went there from New Lex in the early 90s who was a really good player, safety for him. And it didn't end up working out for him. And he ended up leaving Ohio State and going back home. And there's a couple guys from Lancaster that had a lot of success at Ohio State. There's a couple guys that didn't. And I just always want to have a shot. So he goes, I just wanted to kind of see how, because I thought that's what where you wanted to go. And when it proved to be true on the paper, he goes, I felt like that's what you were going to say. So that's why I asked you, because if it would have been somewhere else, I might not have. And to his credit, it was a very wise thing that he did. The guy's name was Danny Fink, really good player. And he was actually helped my dad coach me in 7th grade. So I knew Danny. I grew up around watching him play. I mean, he was like the greatest player I knew when I was 7, 8 years old. And he had my dad had him come back in to our house and talk to me leading in about his experience at Ohio State and why he left. And then he kind of went into why he thought I would be successful there and why it would be a good decision for me. End up probably being the best decision of my life. But at the time, like you don't you don't know that the prism of history hasn't been revealed yet to you. And
Yeah.
so it was just a nerve-wracking time with all of that, like reliving it all now. Um, going through with my brothers and seeing them go through it all and trying to make right decisions because you don't know, man. You're 18 years old, and I mean, you made the decision twice, like so. Fill me in on what yours was like.
Well, I mean, mine was a very different situation, Bob. I
You're
mean,
you're
you're
in
really
county
good.
lockup.
High school football. Yeah, I mean, like my recruiting story is legendary because Air Force on their home recruiting visit, I was in jail, and my mom and my best friend had to come bail me out. And I told him I was like literally doing push-ups and sit-ups in the jail cell. I had like probably unpaid parking tickets, speeding tickets. I had gotten in a bunch of fights. I
Random
didn't even know why
assault,
I was
yeah.
in there. But I just did a bunch of like calisthenics in there. So that way, when they got me, I was like dripping sweat. So that way I could walk in like, hey, wrestling practice went a little long. That was my excuse. And they decided to still keep me. But I wasn't like that. I didn't have those type of schools, Bob. I had Air Force, Navy, Army, SMU, which was terrible at the time. This is the late 90s.
Yeah, but the
And
chicks were so
Missouri.
hot there, and everybody's so rich. Like it's the greatest thing. I know they're coming off the death penalty. Then it was
Yeah,
like
no doubt. But it was so close to
1993.
home. It was so close to home. And my thing is, I wanted to serve in the military and I wanted to go where the best football was. And that was Air Force. So I was like, let's go. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. So, and that was it. And then when I did transfer out, which is a story in and of itself, nothing to do with the military. Love the military. More to do with me just being an asshole at the time of my life and them sticking to their guns as to what my punishment should be for having a car on campus as a sophomore that I used to literally go get treatment so I could continue to play every single practice and game. This was way before we had a bunch of different things. When I came to Ohio State, it was very, very simple. A lot of people were, hey, why do you want to go there? They have Bobby Carpenter and AJ Hawk and Mike DeAndre. And I was like, I want to go where the best are. And, they have great deer hunting and they had great defenses. And I was like, let's go there. I knew nothing about Ohio, but I knew that Ohio State was the most similar to the brotherhood that I experienced at the Air Force Academy. Jim Trussell was very much like a Fisher to Barry. Mark D'Antonio was coached by Richard Bell, who is my defensive coordinator. So there was a lot of synergies along with the guys on the team that I was like, when I first met you and AJ, I was like, dude, these dudes are just like me. They like to get bumpy. They like to play football. Boom, go Bucks, right? And it was very, very easy to make that decision. But I think, and the reason I say that is because like Hunter's doing the thing with Finley today, and you talked about fits. I'm like, Finley's an absolute perfect fit because why? We're in the weeds with our kid, and where they could be successful and talking to the guys that are on their team, watching them play fall baseball and what that looked like. I was like, man, these dudes are big. These dudes love to train. I really enjoyed their coach and what he was about as far as developing the players. Because again, success is relative. I mean, it's I always say this: you get out what you put out in your college athletic experience, and how that propels you forward. In the next chapter, the real career of your life, which is outside of whatever sport you play. But it's very impactful. And then today, it seems to get lost in the college football landscape because there's the early signing period. There's the NIL. It's almost like because of the transfer portal, there's multiple signing days because
Yeah.
you're still trying to keep the roster that you got in those relationships. And there's other things that we'll probably allude to of people going after your current roster, even though they haven't, the portal's closed and they're still trying to come after your guys. And what does that look like? Very, very difficult. And I think what gets lost is the reflection of all the people that it took to help get you there. And this is not a signing day for them, but it's just a celebration of all your work and all the other people's work that have helped you on this path. And I look at Chris King, our baseball coach down here in Florida, who happens to be from Youngstown, Ohio. And Chris is adamant about if you want to play college baseball, he will do everything in his power to help his guys on his team that want to play college baseball go play college baseball, whether that's JUCO, D3, D2, D1, doesn't matter. whatever he has to do, he's making calls for those guys if they have a high GSF and they want to go play baseball. I love that. So this day is like a day for them because that's what they're constantly working to. It's a day for the athlete. It's a day for the families and all those that were involved along that process because nobody really goes in on a loan. There was a lot of people that impacted my life in those original signing days. It was really for them, right? The Brian Dobsons, my parents, Steph's parents, right? Like people that fed me when I had nothing. Like, yeah, here you go. Brian training me for free to do stuff around the gym. That was for him. Like that's really what the day embodies. And I think sometimes it gets lost with how NIL in the portal has taken over the college football landscape.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And one of the great comments that came out of here, Schlegs, someone said, surprised that Schleg's got into Air Force, played so violent for high level of intellect, meaning like it's hard to get into the academies. It's incredibly hard to get into the academy, Schlegs. And I don't know how they found you and pulled you out of the clink. The break.
Hey, listen. First off, my GPA in high school was amazing. It's just
Schlegs is a really smart guy, folks. I will tell you that. And well, before we get any further, because we got to get a break here in a minute, and we're going to continue this conversation because I think it's really good. But like that was one of the other things that drew me to Ohio State was just, and you played with those guys, Schlegs. We had a smart group of dudes. Like our class had a really, from Nate Sally, Tyler Everett, like the dudes that we played with, you could do a lot because we had guys that understood what was going on. It wasn't just the linebackers, our secondary, our defensive front on the offensive side. And so when you have that, that makes it a lot of fun to be able to go do that. So that was really good. So we're going to grab a quick break here. Before we get that, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Export. And Schlegs, that's why we're still smart, because if you're a parent or athlete, you want to protect what matters most. So whether it's your teeth or your brain, it's been tested by professional athletes, trusted and designed by NHL team dentists, and it's going to take care of you. Listen, they feature 3 layers of advanced protection, patented use of carbon fiber. They custom 3D print that bad boy to your own unique grill for better protection, better performance, max comfort, clear communication. Focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Visit exportguards.com/Bobby today. Save 15% on your order. Export, protect what matters most. Coming up next, I'll let you know the parents' role, because Schlegs, you just went through this. I'm a couple years away. I know there's a lot of people out there watching this. Like the parents' role, and I don't care if your kid's playing sports in college or not, but helping choose for them where to go. Because my dad gave me some great advice. I want to pass that along. Coming up next.
Welcome to Big Play, the fastest growing sports media company in America.
I'm gonna keep it straight with you. The reason you should watch our show is because I look good, baby.
Come get some!
Join our millions of fans for live sports talk shows hosted by the top former athletes and sports personalities in the industry.
Ohio, it's my home state.
Obviously, I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan.
Watch what you want, where you want, when you want. Welcome to Big Play.
Make sure you tune in.
I love you, Cleveland.
All right, Schlegs, I looked for the hat. I couldn't find it. I think it might be, I have a hat stack upstairs. I thought it was at the back of that. I think it might be downstairs with my other stuff. I'm going to have to dig around and look for it. I haven't worn it in a while. It's a fitted hat. It says 7 1/4, maybe, I think.
Ooh.
I don't think 7 3/8, but it's shrunk down. It's hard to fit on. I'll have to dig through it. But the advice that my dad gave me was because I always hear these people's parents like, where are you going to send your kid to school? Like if your kid's a good player. And, I remember my people talking to my dad, well, you're going to send him here, you're going to send him there. And it's his choice. And I've always told people this, like, would you let your son play at this school? Would you let him go to that school? The reality is it's their choice. And my dad told me this. And I asked him, I go, where do you think I should go? He goes, I'm not going to tell you that. He's like, that's something you got to figure out on your own. It's a little bit it's a little bit like kind of like a vision quest or something. You got to figure that answer out on your own, because if I tell you where to go, and it doesn't work out, you're going to resent that forever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the one who's got to wake up at 5:15 in the middle of January and go do your winter workouts. You're the one that's got to go in and do rehab before practice. You're the one that's got to sit there and listen to your coach yell at you, that's got to go to class, that's got to grind through all these things. It's not my decision. It's not my choice. It's yours. So you've got to own that. You've got to own that decision. And I mean, he was there for input, but he would not when I asked him, where do you think I should go? He would not give me even a hint of an answer. He would do a lot like what Tress would do. He'd ask a couple of questions like, well, what's important to you? Do you want to do this? Where do you want to live when you're done playing? Like all of those different things. Because Schlegel says, now, like with your son, like he's the one that's got to go through all that, not you. You've already done it. That's what my dad goes, I've already done all this, man. You're the one that's got to make those choices.
Yeah, Bob, that's spot on. And all through this little process, I knew his goal was that he wanted to continue playing baseball. He loves baseball. And so, and I always told you guys back in the day, right? Like my son just started training with me when he was about 15 and a half, 16 years old. But when he decided to, you got to make sure that the answer is yes, like I'm there. And so some of the things that I personally want to do got to go to the wayside because they're the most important thing. They're the greatest investment of my time that I am given, right? It's not something that's required. It's a blessing in my honest opinion. So when they say I want to go do it, then everything stops and I go help them achieve their goals. And in this, it's also some of the best lessons I learned, Bob, was from when you and I went and did our MBA together at Ohio State. And when I was in college the first time, I did not really know what it is that I wanted to do. And so I took a lot of like different things. And now looking back, I know I should have transferred to Ohio State, should have been an engineer, and then went on and got a master's while I was already there because I went to college for 6 years, it seems like. And then doing the MBA, like I did everything. I read everything. I wanted to get everything out of every class that I took. One, because I was paying for part of it. And two, I wanted to be better. Like I knew why I was going. I saw the landscape of college football changing. I wanted to equip myself with different set of skill set because I saw it going from, what it is to a strength coach being the chief operating officer and understanding marketing, understanding finance, understanding operations and all these things to make it better when you build facilities and you market to a staff and you market to players and how you could do that. That's why I went. So then as we were going along this journey, you also got to remember, guys, like in Florida, they have bright futures. It's freaking amazing. Hunter basically has a free scholarship anywhere he wants to go. You still got to get into the school, but he could go anywhere in the state school in the state of Florida for free. All you got to do is pay for, room and board. It's freaking awesome. So when you make these decisions of where you want to go, it's like, where do you want to go, Hunter? Like, where do you want to go? I know that we're probably moving back to Ohio. Well, I want to be around family. All right, cool. Now what? All right. So that kind of navigates that. What do you want to do outside of it? Well, I kind of like finance. I kind of want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, do you really want to be an entrepreneur? Because that's kind of terrible. But if you do, here are the things that you need to know. And he's good with numbers. He understands it and he likes finance because I've always showed him all the financials and how I get down and how I make decisions. And then when we went there, he was meeting with their business school people. It was a very small group, right? And Hunter, to your point, Bob, like us having a lot of smart guys, all of his friends on the baseball team are all very highly like academic, full ride type guys in Florida. That's who he gravitates to. That's who kind of the baseball guys are there. And it was instantaneous, like really good banter convos with those guys. Like this seems to be a good fit for you, man. But he has to own it because You're now moving from Florida where it's nice and it's sunny, and I'm sitting right here and it's 79 degrees, and you're going to Findlay, Ohio, and it's cold, and they got wind turbines, and it snows, So buckle up, Buttercup, because the environment is a lot different. So, but they have to own it, Bob, and there's no greater thing than that. And I also think with our players, let's talk real life now. You heard a lot of guys talk about the development. You heard a lot of guys talking about the brotherhood. Like those things aren't easy to replicate. And honestly, for me, the decision to come to Ohio State, it was where could I go compete against the best to make me the best version of myself? And what has the closest brotherhood to that of which I left the academy? And it was simple. It was Ohio State. And I think now when they go through and they can sift through kind of the BS that's out there of other programs and what does it look like, what it doesn't, you're coming off a national championship year. You saw how tight-knit that unit was. Seth even talked about it in a great article about that players meeting. But like, that's what you want. Like, that's where the memories happen. That's where the magic happens. Can you actually equate a dollar amount to that? Yes, you got to get your value. But then we always talk about too, Bob, if you are that caliber of player, the development that you receive here, what does that look like to another school? And also, when you do go to the league and you are NFL ready, it allows you to get to that second contract faster. And I think all of them are weighing those things. And do you have to put a dollar amount on there? Maybe a little bit, but it's like, what do you hold as the highest emphasis? And the craziest thing is, Bob, to what you discussed and how you made the decision, these men, young men, are having to make that same decision twice a year now.
Yeah.
That's the bumpy part about this entire thing. It was back then, it was I'm in, I'm all in. And now it's like twice a year. Every time a portal opens, I got to go back and reevaluate where that is. So it just puts even more emphasis on the coach-player relationship and the player-player relationship camaraderie that's in the building.
And I think even with that, Schlegs, it's coach-player, it's player-player, and then it's getting the right player as the right person of trying to evaluate that. And you have to have players that are incredibly intelligent, that are measured, that are mature now more than ever before, because like you said, the allure of that, and we'll get into some of the stuff with JJ and, the opportunities that these guys have, chasing dollars is great. And there may be a lot of dollars to chase, but in college, but if money's all you chase, that's all you ever catch. And maybe you'll not be developed the way that you want to, and maybe you won't have the relationship and all the other good stuff that comes with it. The part that, when Ryan Day talked about the story of Ohio State, and you and I did the podcast all about the team with Coach Tress. I'd encourage anybody to go out there and watch it. I went back and rewatched the one that he had with Ryan. I watched one with AJ. He had Malcolm on. He just had John Gruden on there. Like, Tress got a lot of great dudes. Like, I would encourage watching it. Like, if you're driving or something in the morning, just throwing that bad boy on and listening to it, because it's pretty fun. But like the story of everything that happens. And Ryan said, like, you got to make sure you tell the story correctly. When you win and have success, you get a chance to tell that story. And the best parts of the story, they aren't always just the wins, and it's the grinding to the win. It's the struggle on the way to the win. It's those interpersonal relationships that you have that helped you get to that point to be able to get to the win. Like, the win is just the outcome of it. The process is really the story. And so that's what's tremendous. And you get that from the team when you have that connectivity, you have that brotherhood. So it was a big conversation we just had right there, Schlegs. It was a lot of fun. We got some other little nuggets that we're getting to get a chance to drop out there. I wanted to get to some of the weight room stuff, but I'm going to get to that tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. What do you want to talk about now, man? There's so many good things.
Well, we're going to get to this because we're going to get to a little more coordinator talk with Ohio State. I know the folks always want to hear that, who we think the potential coordinators are going to be, what that coaching decision, that carousel is going to look like. We'll dive into that. And then Jim Knowles had a statement on leaving Ohio State for Penn State. And this isn't some made up AI deal or anything else. This is straight from the horse's mouth and everything that went on. So his not the F Ohio State hat or whatever the heck he had on. There
AI is real.
Photoshopped and everything else. This is actually Jim Knowles' statement. So we'll talk about the coordinators and Jim Knowles, his departure from Ohio State, and his comments on that here coming up next in the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Welcome to Big Play, the fastest growing sports media company in America.
I'm gonna keep it straight with you. The reason you should watch our show is because I look good, baby.
Come get some!
Join our millions of fans for live sports talk shows hosted by the top former athletes and sports personalities in the industry.
Ohio, it's my home state.
Obviously, I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan.
Watch what you want, where you want, when you want. Welcome to Big Play.
Make sure you tune in.
I love you, Cleveland.
All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show, Schlegs, and let's dive on into this. If we could throw up, the Jim Knowles, the screenshot of Jim Knowles leaving Ohio State, so we can read this off the folks. You know what? Maybe they can read along too, Pat, if they got a chance to be able to see that. On leaving Ohio State, it's courtesy of Chase Brown. I'm grateful for my time at Ohio State and the opportunity that Coach Day gave me. We're going to be able to get that up there. Here we go. Coach Day gave me. We had the number one defense in the country, won a national championship. Had a great relationship with the players, Coach Day, and the administration. Felt supported, Knowles said. You reach a point in your career when given opportunities based on your past performance. Penn State, for me, growing up as an inner city Philly, was the epitome of college football when I was a kid. I was never talented enough to make it to Penn State as a player, but given the opportunity to do so now as a coach is really where I want to be and continue my career and bring any expertise I can to the organization. Sorry you got caught in the blue circle of the death there, Pat, trying to throw that up. I thought it was very measured. I thought it was a statement that there was no ulterior motive. There was nothing subversive about it where he was taking jabs or shots at people. I thought it was very respectful from everything that was said out there, Schlegs, and everything that he ultimately that was kind of addressed, because there was rumors about him being disrespected. There was rumors about him not getting along with the staff and ultimately everything else.
Well, regardless if those things did happen, he took the high road in this statement. So, and I always say, like, people don't need to hear the inner workings of what goes on behind closed doors, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the players. The only thing matters as a coach is to make sure that your players can play at max capacity and at a high level on Saturday or Sunday if you're in the NFL, or Friday if you're in high school. It's not about egos. It's about being soldiers and making sure that your soldiers are set up for success. So regardless of whatever transpired behind closed doors, nobody needs to know. The only thing they need to know is that Jim Knowles wanted to be a Penn State guy. He's from Pennsylvania, and he's used his career as a coach that set him up for this opportunity to go back and coach at a school that he's always wanted to either play or coach at. And now he has the opportunity. And I guarantee you that he now has a better understanding coming from Oklahoma State, which is completely different circumstances, to the original Ohio State, the original OSU. Because remember, we played him in the Alamo Bowl. It was like OSU. It's like, no. This is the one that with the D in front of it. He can now take best practices of 2025 and then take them over to James Franklin. Said, like, this is how it's done. And what they did to be able to make this run and how it should look, feel, and act. And that adds a lot to, James Franklin's staff being able to come with that background of winning a national championship the previous year. So, yeah, good for him. And I'm sure he's going to lean on that. And I'm sure there's things he learned from a staff and players of what he needs to make his defense successful while he's at Penn State. So I'm happy that this came out this way. And the good thing for us, we move on, just like Caleb Downs said, right? Hey, man, we got a lot of talented dudes. We believe in our coaching staff. Regardless of who they bring in, we're going to be great next year. I don't know if he said that last part, but I believe it. And I believe it because the guys that actually are the ones that make the plays are still in the building.
Absolutely. And so transitioning on that now, looking at Ohio State, like who do they have? What does that ultimately look like for them? And the longer this thing goes, the more I'm inclined to believe that it's an internal hire. I without any like inside baseball on this or anything, like I feel like it's going to end up being some combination of Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri, and they probably go grab maybe someone to maybe help Larry with the defensive line, or depending on how his transition process, how much longer he wants to coach, because those are conversations that ultimately have to happen, Schlegs, as well. But I feel like that's going to be the case, and that'll give you, that juice moving forward. And here's the good news: Tim Walton, defensive coordinator in the NFL, OG's a Buckeye, played here, all about the Bucks. He's got the NFL experience that you love and has a great relationship. Like Tim has a great relationship with players. And here's the last thing of it: like if Tim Walton's the coordinator of Ohio State, I don't think Tim Walton's leaving unless there's an NFL team that calls him and says, "Tim, we want to make you our head coach." And so like that's the certainty that you have with that when you have a guy that's a Buckeye, when they're like, "Hey, I'm in a good spot right now. I've done a lot in my career. This is where I'm at." And so he brings a lot to the table. Matt Guerrieri gives you a little bit the other end of that spectrum. The young mind knows this defense with Jim Knowles. And here's the one thing about Guerrieri I didn't realize, because he's been with Knowles a lot, but and his dad's a Youngstown, his parents are Youngstown folks. Like he grew up on the east side of Cleveland, moved around a lot. I think his dad was in the Navy when he was younger, but lived on the east side of Cleveland. So he's an Ohio guy too. And so I think as much as like as tight as he is with Knowles, I think that would be a good relationship here. Right? I think this is something he wants to stay. You bring in a defensive line coach, and maybe it's someone from the NFL. They still have one more game to play, and so we'll see ultimately how that works. Like you mentioned, Cullen, obviously from Kansas City. But just the longer this goes, the more it feels like Ryan's not panicked. And there's guys out there that he could be bringing in at this point, unless it was someone from two staffs in the NFL, or potentially we already have the guys on staff that we feel good about.
Yeah, and that also is the same to be true for the offensive side of the ball, right,
Yeah.
Bob? I mean, Brian's Hart has earned this opportunity to be it. What does that look like? Could it be somebody that knows the offensive line that's also called plays before, and they kind of two-headed monster of coordinating that? The biggest thing to me in all of this is making sure that the hire allows Ryan to be comfortable and stay the head football coach, CEO of Ohio State Football LLC. To me, that's where all of these have to go to. And the people that are in the building doing those things are ones that he unequivocally trusts to get the job done. Because I feel that with all of the other circumstances that go on with now being a head coach, when you're, like we talked about, Bob, when you're working in the business, you can't work on the business, and working on the business and the relationships with now a potential 105 scholarship athletes and the portal and tampering and other people coming after not only your staff, but your players twice a year, you have to be really, really good at those other areas. And we only have a finite amount of bandwidth to be able to do certain things on a day in and day out basis. So to me, regardless of what these hires look like, that has to be the number one thing on Ryan's mind is, do I still have the same comfort level with what's going on like I did the previous year to allow me to do the things that I did in 24 that allowed us to be the best team in the country? That's what it all boils down to.
What also boils down to is this. Will Howard's pretty fast, and he might be
how about
running.
that?
He might be running up the draft boards. We got that coming up in headlines. So Schlegs, Will Howard, sneaky fast. Sneaky fast. This was from the NFL Rookie Watch. Will Howard is reportedly thought to be the most slept on QB in this year's draft by one NFL scout. Howard's speed is something reportedly intrigues a lot of scouts. As long as there's not a 20-yard line at the AT&T, you're going to be good, Schlegs. I mean, I think he'll be fine. Or maybe at Penn State. That may have got him too. He's been secretly hitting speeds of 22 miles an hour while training. You know, Ryan talked about that. For reference, that would make Howard the fastest QB in the NFL with only 3 players reaching speeds above 22 miles an hour. I don't know if I'd say he's the fastest dude out there, but he when he opens up, he can run. Just a reminder, Howard is 6'4", 236, just slightly smaller than Josh Allen. Several NFL teams have Howard rank as their QB4 right now, with some having him tabbed as a first-round pick. And this is a guy, Schlegs, who, remember, when we started, people looked at as a 4th, 5th, maybe 6th rounder upon his commitment to Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, how about that, right? And this goes back to the thing that we talked about. I don't even know what day it is. I think it's Wednesday, probably last week, about, you know, when he basically reiterated their quote from Jim Tressel about, I thank God every day that he made me a Buckeye. And yes, you can be a Buckeye for a year and be a Buckeye 100%, because I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, look at my own life. Being a Buckeye is a life-changing thing. And even Bob, in your life, as you went back and you went over and you described your process of selecting the schools and how your life would be dramatically changed if you went somewhere else, what being a Buckeye did for you. It did for Will Howard, and I've already known that he was this fast. I've seen him run. He came in the building 6'4", 245, now is 6'4", 236. He's, you know, and again, this is the same guy that for 3 years was, you're the backup, right? You got to earn that spot every single year. Oh, we got to push him out the building because we got to bring somebody else in. Everybody's like, well, why are we bringing this guy in? It was for the traits that we wanted him the most, which is the leadership and command of an offense. And you took a 61% a passing completion percentage guy in his career and turned him into where he had the best completion percentage of any quarterback in the history of Ohio State football, even more so than C.J. Stroud. And you can say, well, look at the weapons. Yeah, I am looking at the weapons. You still got to deliver the football to the weapons. And so when you put all of that together and winning a national championship and what the NFL looks like, they want leaders and men at the quarterback position. Will Howard has positioned himself to be one of those type of guys. And all of these things, it says, intrigue scouts, because you guys got to remember, when you look at the combine is literally a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or this, which is more evaluation. And that's all it is. But all of a sudden, you're like, hey, here's what quarterbacks do. But he has that ability to go out and just get another first down, because in that game, it's about possessions. How do I get 2 first downs every single time? That's what they want. So having a guy with that ability, and honestly, the biggest thing that I found about Will Howard this year was how difficult he was to sack. How many guys did you see that were around him and he was still able to, like, dump the ball off or throw the ball away? Like, he didn't get sacked. He didn't get sacked a lot. One, because the offensive line, but 2, he's a big body to take down. That bodes well at the next level. And I think that somebody, wherever he goes, is going to get somebody that has a high give a shit, that is a leader of men, and I think he could do some really good things at the next level. Excited for him.
Absolutely. Well, we got a story about Jeremiah. We're going to hold that thing tomorrow because we're up against it right now. We've got our favorite, like, we are. That's just the facts. Okay. We got our favorite segment coming up. That's the end of headlines, because we have Tailgate Talk where we answer your questions, which is what we love to do, coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Get the most out of work, life, and all your outdoor adventures with top-selling upgrades for your truck. Guaranteed fit, free shipping, easy install, expert support, and thousands of dealers just a click away. Bring your truck to life. Real Truck. Upgrade today and save between $50 and $400 on select Real Truck products. Visit realtruck.com/specials.
All right, Now we get to go to our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Go check them out at realtruck.com. They'll bring your truck, your Jeep, your Bronco, all of it to life at realtruck.com. They've got all the fixins for the interior, the exterior, the seat covers, the bed covers, the winches, anything you need. They got coolers, Schlegs, stuff for your cup holders, everything you could possibly want. And if you spend $100 with our friends at Real Truck, they've been a great partner of us. You're going to get free shipping. And so that'll be tremendous for you. Please check them out, realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs, we got some comments from yesterday. And folks, if you've got some stuff you want to throw in the chat, some questions, go ahead, fire away, and we'll get those. But Schlegs, yesterday, and I don't even know this is from Trey Welch from yesterday's comments to the show. We were talking about going with Dan Campbell going to South Padre. He said, how do you not go to PCB instead of South Padre, choosing crap water instead of the best beaches in Florida? I guess Panama City Beach. I didn't know what PCB was. I was trying to figure out what that was. I always call it 30A in between Destin and Panama, which is a great spot. Here's a question coming from.
How do you pick that? It's because he lived in Texas. And that's where you go. Like, you're not driving. I mean, like, you're not driving all the way to the FLA. I mean, we didn't even know what 30A was. I had to be enlightened to that. And then once I found it, poof, it blew up. And now you can barely even afford it. Like, you got to get 6 families to go just so you can mitigate the cost.
Yeah, it's expensive. I wish I would have bought a place down there in 08, but it probably got knocked down by a hurricane. So all good there. This comes from RoBC 36-1. Sorry, I don't know this, but is a known fact that Hardline wants the OC position. Has he said so? I don't know if he's overtly said that he wants to call the plays, but he was like, he's co-OC. He had that title 2 years ago. They brought Chip Kelly in, and he's been kind of learning under Chip. I don't want to speak for Brian, but I would imagine, given that he interviewed for the West Virginia head coaching job, Schlegs, I would imagine that he wants the OC job.
I think, Bob, you brought up something that I really appreciate that you brought up. And a lot of guys that are at Ohio State now are at Ohio State because they love Ohio State. Like, James got back into coaching. Yes, he went with Marcus, but it was like, I'm going to test the waters, see if this is something that I really love to do. And he did. And when James does something, like all of us, Bob, like, we're going to give it everything we possibly got. And it brought him back to Ohio State. And this is where he wants to be. Does James potentially at some point want to be a defensive coordinator? Yeah, but you also got to think about when guys have been there and done that, it's not always about the trajectory of like, I got to go be a head coach as fast as I possibly can. Part of that maturation is I want to go call plays. Like, I want to test myself. And maybe even coming out of that West Virginia one was I just need more experience being able to call plays, because as things go out the season, right? Is that something that I could like step in and just automatically do and have confidence that I could do it? And when I go hire that offensive coordinator, looking at how the synergies between Chip and Ryan and myself and Ryan, or myself and Kevin Wilson, or myself and when they had, O'Brien there for the hot time, like how does that look? Because all of these things are lessons that you're going to carry with you if you want to be a head coach. So the good thing that we have right now with the people that are on staff, Bob, is they enjoy doing what they do, where they do it, and who they do it with. Now, part of that process is also growing them to be able to have success moving forward. You talked about OG. Hey, if he leaves to go be a coordinator in the NFL potentially, where they're paying you $6 million a year, and all you get to do and focus on ball is down the road, yeah, we understand he's going to go. Or to be a head coach, right? Do you want to be a head coach in college? But for Brian, like, this is the next part of that. It will also be the same thing for James, but better to do it where you want to do it, and the value prop that you can always sell and be great at, and that's being at the Ohio State University. I think it's something that has to happen. I think it will happen. And I think he would be the right man for the job. But again, we're not speaking for him. I'm just speaking as an outsider looking at why these guys come back and do what they're able to do. Because let's not kid ourselves. He's the best wide receiving developing coach in the country, pro or college, period.
Poof. David Copperfield. Well, we had one more question I was going to get to. We're going to save it for tomorrow. Phil's got a great one about your ideal Super Bowl party, Schlegs. So we'll break that out a little bit closer to the game. I'm sure Phil will hop on with us again tomorrow to break that down. That's all the time we have for Real Truck brought to you, or Tailgate Talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. Coming up next, we'll close out the show with the parting thoughts of Anthony Schlegel. I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer. All right, parting thoughts. Mr. Schlegel, wrap the show.
You know what? Hey, I was going to put something else on there about the offense and how crazy what they did this year, but I'm just going to keep it. How much time do I got, Bob? Like 35 seconds?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right, cool. So, hey, it's National Signing Day, and I would just say this. Like, look at all the high schools that we're around. And a lot of us listening, right? Like you're in small towns in Ohio, and you have athletes that are going to other places. Like, don't forget to celebrate that because, you know, success is relative. And we were even talking about in the chat, like what's success to me? Just saved by grace. Like everything else falls into place after that. But like where they're going, the work that was required, the coaches that have poured into them, like look at your coaches at the school. Tell them thank you, man. Because I see all these small little schools, Logan Elm. I see coaches in there working with like 12 dudes in the offseason. That's time, energy, and effort away from their families, just pouring in to young people. And it takes everybody to allow them to go achieve their goals. And that's something that I don't think we should all take for granted in this world of NIL and whatever. Like that's not the reality for most people. That's 1% of 1% that is going there. So let's celebrate all those that are going in other sports, where they're going. It doesn't matter. It's the work that they put in, and we celebrate that work.
We love it, Schlegs. Stay locked in. We'll see you at 12:30 tomorrow.